Wake up, everybody, no more sleeping in bed. No more back thinking, time for thinking ahead. The world has changed so very much from what it used to be. There's so much hatred, war and poverty. Oh, wake up all the teachers, time to teach a new way. Maybe then they'll listen to what you have to say. They're the ones who's coming up, and the world is in their hands. When you teach the children, teach them the very best you can. The world won't get no better if we just let it be. Na, 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 na. The world won't get no better. We gotta change it now, just you and me. Wake up all the doctors, make the old people well. They're the ones who suffer and who catch all the hair. They don't have so very long.
Good evening, good evening, good evening. I'm Dr. Vernon Shazier, aka Dr. V, aka the Gospel Cowboy. Welcome to our weekly Bible huddle here at River Life Fellowship Church, located in the beautiful Treasure Coast of South Florida, Fort Pierce, Port St. Lucie, Vero Beach. Thank you for tuning in. If you have not yet, we would love to have you come and worship with us in person. Every Sunday we start at 10 a.m. We start on time, and we always have a great time worshiping God. Hope you've had a champion day today and that your week is going well. Let's have a brief word of prayer, and then we're going to get to it. God, we thank you for this day. Thank you for this time set aside to study your word, share your word, and partake of your word. I pray that what I have prepared will bless and spiritually feed the souls who will be in this Bible huddle today and in days to come. Pray your blessings in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, we are in lesson 3 of this month's series, and tonight we're talking about faith that endures, and I'm going to be looking at and pulling out and drawing some biblical truths and nuggets out of Hebrews chapter 11. Book of Hebrews chapter 11, and if I had to give it a focus, I would say the focus is trusting God through adversity and trials. The book of Hebrew is attributed to an unknown author. Some people have suggested Paul is the author. Others have disagreed, but it was written to Jewish Christians who were experiencing persecution, who was growing weary in their faith, and who were tempted to go back to Judaism. Hebrew as a whole is a sermon letter arguing that Jesus is better, so stay with him, don't turn back. Chapter 11 is not just a faith chapter. It is a strategic encouragement. If they endured by faith, they meaning who this letter is written to, so can you. And it makes it clear that biblical faith is not passive agreement. It is active trust that produces obedience. And you'll discover that faith operates in two dimensions: future hope, that is what is hoped for, and invisible reality, that is what is not seen. And so, if I had to give you a big idea, I would say biblical faith is not proven by ease but by endurance. And Hebrew chapter 11 shows us that faith is not the absence of hardship, but the courage to trust God when hardship refuses to leave. Let me start by saying a word about faith sees what others cannot. Okay? Faith sees what others cannot. The very first verse in Hebrews chapter 1 says, "Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen." Say it again. Faith sees what others cannot. That means faith gives substance to hope before circumstances change. Faith believes, faith hopes before the circumstance change. In spite of the fact that the circumstance have not changed, faith still gives hope. Faith gives substance to hope before circumstances change. I'm repeating that because it is imperative that you know that. It is important that you know that faith is not believing after your situation change. It's believing before you see it change. It's believing before it changes. It's believing before it turns around. Believing before it gets better. Before God answers. That's what he means when he says, "Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen." Faith also provides evidence when proof is still invisible. Yeah, we trust in the invisible. We trust in the not yet. We trust in the unseen. That's what we do as Christians. That's what we do as disciples of Jesus Christ. So even though we don't see it, we still believe it. We still trust God. Faith provides evidence when proof is still invisible. Faith is not imagination. It is spiritual perspective. You're looking at this from a spiritual perspective. You're dealing with it from a spiritual perspective. And that spiritual perceptive is, I trust God, I believe God, though I do not see it yet, though I do not know the answers, though my change has not come. That's the spiritual perception that you operate, and the spiritual perspective that you operate and you walk in faith in. Again, it's believing before the change, trusting before the change, believing in the invisible. And let me say this here. You're never trusting God without already having evidence. Now, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. What that means is, when I say that is, I'm not asking you, and the Bible is not really asking you to have, I know some people say you need to have blind faith, but that's not really what Hebrews is teaching. God has given you, me, he's given all of us enough evidence to trust what we don't see, to trust the invisible, to trust the not yet. Just think about your life. Just think about your track record. Just think about your history. God has already given you enough evidence for you to trust in the invisible, for you to trust in the not yet. How much more does he have to show you? How much more does he have to do for you to believe in the invisible, for you to believe in the not yet? Sometimes we have to be reminded, sometimes we have to remind ourselves of all the evidence God has already given. Yeah. I've heard people say you got to have blind faith. Well, I, I don't really agree with that statement. I I trust in the invisible, but I, I'm not walking with blind faith. I trust in the invisible because of the evidence God has already given me. I trust in the not yet because of the evidence that God has already given me. I trust in the invisible, the not yet, because of the things God has already done for me and showed me. I trust in the visible because of the evidence that I have. So be careful when we use that phrase, or we say things like, you have to have blind faith. Yes, we have blind faith, but we're not talking about um, just blindly trusting God. No, no. You trust in the invisible. You trust in what you cannot see because of the evidence. And now I don't need to start naming. I don't need to start calling roll. I don't need to ask nobody to testify. I know you already have enough evidence to believe in the invisible. I know God has already done enough in your life. God has already shown you enough. God has already rescued you enough times, saved you enough times, opened a door for you enough times, made a way for you enough times. You have enough evidence right now to believe in the not yet. You have enough evidence right now to believe in the invisible. I do not see the new job, but I have evidence that will allow me to thank God in advance and see the new job in advance because of the evidence He has already given me. Yeah. How much more evidence do you need? How much more does God have to show you? Oh, He gives us so much evidence. God, listen here. God has done so much for you. I said Sunday. Just name them one by one. Count your blessings. Name them one by one, and you'll be amazed. You'll be surprised at what all God has done. Sometimes we get so busy in life, we take things for granted. We stop naming things. We stop counting. I really believe that every now and then you do need to pause and just count your blessings and name them one by one so you can remind yourself what God has done. I'm talking about every little thing. I'm talking about everything. I'm talking about the fact that He's worthy with thanks right now because He woke you up this morning and you knew your name and you knew where you were and you knew what day it was and you knew what year it was. And you put your right shoe on your right foot and your left shoe on your left foot. You had a roof over your head. I'm pretty sure some of you had 1, 2, maybe 3 meals already today. Yeah. Sometimes we get so busy that we don't take time to count our blessings and name them one by one so we can remind ourselves of all the things that God has done. All the things that God has done falls into the evidence category. If you need some evidence, just remind yourself what God has already done. That's the evidence. We are not. We say we trust in the invisible. We say we trust in the not yet. we say we walk in blind faith, but it's not blind faith that lacks evidence. hmm Think of it this way. Faith is like an architect's blueprint. Before a building rises, the plans already exist. Or like trusting radar while flying through dense clouds. You believe what the instruments say even when your eyes can't confirm it. hmm In today's world of instant results and data-driven certainty, faith means trusting God without a spreadsheet, trusting God without a timeline, trusting God without a guarantee. Faith today looks like obedience before confirmation emails arrive. Yeah, you have enough evidence to trust God. You have enough evidence to walk in faith. You have enough evidence to believe in the character and the name and the power of God. He's giving you enough evidence. Somebody need to type that in the comment box in all caps. Evidence, yes, yes. Augustine said faith is to believe what you do not see. The reward of this faith is to see what you believe. hmm Faith is believing what you do not see already. And the reward of this is faith is to see what you believe. What do you believe about God? You've got to see it before it's done. You have to see it before it happens. Yeah, that's what Augustine is saying and suggesting in that quote. Faith is to believe what you do not see. The reward of this faith is to see what you believe. hmm He moves on, and the writer of Hebrew then begins to say something about faith obeys before it understands. Listen to what he says in verse 7. By faith Noah, by faith Abraham obeyed and went. Now I've been preaching some sermons on Abraham. He holds up Noah and Abraham as an example of faith. He says, by faith Noah, by faith Abraham obeyed and went. This teaches us that faith moves before clarity, not after it. Faith moves before having all the answers to the question, not after it. Faith moves before it has a blueprint, not after it. Faith moves before God shows you everything, not after it. Faith obeys before it understands. Faith obeys and moves, not knowing all of the answers, not knowing all of the details. Noah, Abraham knew all the details. Noah and Abraham had questions, yet in spite of their questions, they still went, they still moved, they still obeyed. Their faith obeyed before it understood everything. Abraham did not fully understand everything when God says, go, leave your country, leave your kindreds, and go to a place where I'm going to show you. Noah did not fully understand everything when God told him to build an ark. But in spite of them not understanding and knowing all the answers to their questions, they went. Noah built without rain. Noah didn't say, well, when I show me some rain, then I'll see the need and necessity to build a boat, to build a ship. I haven't seen any rain. We haven't had it. We haven't had any rain. This doesn't make sense. Noah built without ever seeing any rain. Could you have done that? Abraham left without having a map. Could you have done that? Listen, obedience is the language faith speaks. If you want to know what faith sounds like when faith speaks, if you allow me to personify faith and talk about faith using human attributes, if faith was talking, here's what faith would sound like. Faith sounds like obedience. That's the language of faith. Obedience. Like stepping into a moving walkway at the airport before you feel it carry you. Yeah. You see the escalator moving, you just believe that if you step onto it, it's going to carry you to the top, up, or to the bottom, down. You don't stand there and wonder and debate, it's moving, but I wonder if I step on it, is it going to take me up? I see it moving up, I see it going up, I see it going down. No. You step onto that moving escalator believing it's going to take you up or down. Stepping into a moving walkway at the airport before you feel it carry you is like walking in faith, walking in obedience, because you have evidence. One of the reasons you step on the escalator with confidence, because you're looking at evidence. You're seeing other people on the escalator going up and going down. You're not without evidence. Well, another way to think about it is trusting a bridge you didn't design, but know it's been tested. I almost at least twice a month I drive over the bridge in Fort Pierce to Hutchinson Island. I drive over it and I'm not wondering, I'm not having thoughts, will this bridge hold me? No. I didn't build a bridge. I don't know the weight load or numbers or data on the bridge. Here's what I do know. It's been tested and it has gotten many of people across, and it's still getting people across. Come here, can I tell you, just like we trust a bridge because we know it has been tested and we see other people going back and forth over that bridge, you can trust God because he has been tested. And you see him every day withstanding, holding men and women's lives in the palm of his hand. I'm telling you, when we say blind faith, we're not talking about being stupid, being ignorant. We're talking about believing and moving without seeing it, believing in the invisible because we have evidence and because God has been tested. Yes, he's been tested. Have you tried him? Have you tested him? Didn't he come through? Hasn't he come through? Yeah. Today, this is changing careers. Today, this is launching a new ministry. Today, this is forgiving deeply or giving generously without knowing how it will work out. That's what it looks like today. Trusting God, engaging in acts of obedience because of the evidence that God has given you and because God has been tested. Faith, hear me, and many of you know what I'm getting ready to say. You know it's the truth. Faith often looks foolish before it looks faithful. Have you ever done anything? Have you ever engaged in an act of faith and it may even felt foolish to you, or it definitely felt foolish to others, but you engaged in faith, you walked in faith, you walked in obedience because what? Because you have tested God and God has given you evidence. I'm trying to hammer this home that you have enough evidence to trust God for the rest of your life. You have tested God enough times for you to trust him for the rest of your life. And sometimes trusting God in the beginning looks foolish, but we trust him in spite of it looking foolish and maybe even feeling foolish. Why? Because we have tested him, we have tried him, and he has given us evidence that he's a God that can be trusted. He's a God that keeps his word. John Calvin says faith is a firm and certain knowledge of God's benevolence towards you. How many times has God extended his hand of benevolence towards you? Oh, I don't know, but I know he does it every day. I know he's done it today. I know before you take your sleep tonight, before you close your eyes, he would have extended his hand of benevolence multiple times. Every day, God extends his hands of benevolence. Every day, God gives you evidence to trust him. Every day, God gives you proof that he's a God like no other. That he is the true and living God, that he is the Alpha and the Omega, that he is the God that stands at the beginning and sees the end, that he is a God that provides, that he is a God who is a shepherd. I'm trying to get somebody to understand tonight. We walk in blind faith. We walk in invisible faith. We walk in obedience because God has given us so much evidence, and we have tested and tried him so many times, and he never fails, and he never will. Somebody tonight who's on this Bible huddle right now, you're dealing with something that requires faith. Let me remind you, he's given you, he being God, has given you enough evidence to trust him with what you're dealing with now. To trust him with what you're going through now. Yes, he's given you enough evidence. and you have tested and tried him enough times to say, God, I don't understand it. I may even be a little nervous, maybe a little scared, but God, I'm going to continue to walk by faith. I'm going to continue to walk in obedience. I'm going to continue to trust you because I've tried you enough times. I've tested you enough times, and you've proven to me enough times that you are a God who keeps his promises, and all day and all night watches over his children. The chapter continues to move, and as it moves, it then talks about faith endures delays and disappointment. Listen to verse 13. These all died in faith, not having received the things promised. He's talking about people who died before receiving what they were promised. Faith does not always get fulfillment in one lifetime. There's some things, there's some promises that God make. He may or he may not fulfill it in your lifetime. Every promise that he made to Abraham did not get fulfilled in Abraham's lifetime. I know that got somebody wondering there. Yeah. Every promise that God makes to you will not be fulfilled in your lifetime. Some promises are seen from a distance, not held in the hands. Yet faith endures not because it gets answers, but because it trusts God's faithfulness. There's some promises that God has made. There's some promises that God have made. There's some promises that God has made. You can find this throughout the Bible that did not get fulfilled in that person's lifetime. But God did fulfill the promise. God did keep the promise. And Abraham is a great example of that. There's some things that God is going to do in your life. There's some blessings that God has already decided that he's going to do. And some of them will manifest in your lifetime. Some of them will manifest in your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren's lifetime. But just know, whatever God has for you, whatever God plans on blessing you with, he will do it. But sometimes we think everything that God wants to give to us, do for us, deposit into our family, will happen in our lifetime. No. Everything doesn't happen in one lifetime. I keep telling you, and Abraham is an example, God is always thinking bigger and beyond you. Yeah. Some promises are seen from a distance. Yeah, you won't get to hold them in your hand, but they will. They will. They will be promises that God keep. It's like planting trees you know you'll never sit up under. That makes sense. I'm trying to give an analogy that helps drive home that point. There's some trees that are planted that the one who plants it knows they'll never sit up under it. But their children, their grandchildren, their great-grandchildren will sit up under it. We have foreparents who paved ways, made a way, built schools, built institutions that they knew that they would never enter, but they knew their bloodline would, their children, their grandchildren would. If that doesn't click for you or connect with you, think of it this way. A relay runner who runs their leg faithfully, even though everyone else crosses the finish line. Does that connect with you? A relay runner runs their leg faithfully, even though someone else on the team is the one who crosses the finish line. I mean, in a 4x1 relay race, you have 4 runners. The runner number 1 runs his or her hardest. Runner number 2 runs his or her hardest. Runner number 3 runs his or her hardest. But only runner number 4 crosses the finish line. There are some races that you are running. There are some races you will run, some faith races, some obedient races, that your children will cross the finish line, that your grandchildren, that your great-grandchildren, that your great-great-great-great-grandchildren. There's some finish lines that Abraham did not cross. There's some finish lines that Noah did not cross. There's some finish lines that Esther did not cross. But someone else down the generation, someone else in their family crossed those finish lines. And it was finish lines that God had chose to bless them with, but they didn't necessarily see every finish line or cross every finish line that God had decided he was going to bless them with. It gives you something to thinking about, doesn't it? That God sees so far down the line that there's some blessings that he's made up in his mind that he's going to bless you with, that you won't even see it. You won't even taste it. You won't even hold it. But your grandchild will, or it may be 3-4 generations down. Yeah. That's why I say God not only is interested in working in you, he's also interested in working through you. Whatever God has for you, it's always bigger than you. It's always beyond you. You won't see it all. Some you will. Some finish lines you'll cross. Some you will hold. But there's some you will not hold, and there's some finish lines you will not cross. Let me come close to you and bring it home. In a culture of instant gratification, Hebrew reminds us that delayed fulfillment does not mean divine denial. Faith today must survive unanswered prayers and unfulfilled expectation. Did you hear what I just said? You have to have a faith that can survive unanswered prayers, delayed answered prayers. You got to have a faith that's more than seeing it tomorrow, getting it tomorrow. No. This faith that the writer of Hebrews 11 is talking about, he's talking about a faith, and he's using people who've had to survive unanswered prayers and unfulfilled expectations. A.W. Tozer says, faith is not a once done act, but a continuous gaze of the heart at the triune God. You've got to keep trusting God. You've got to keep following God. You've got to keep stepping, keep walking with him, even when you don't see it, even when it hasn't fallen in your hands yet. The writer keeps moving through Hebrews, and I'm trying to move through this chapter that is a large chapter and touch on the highlights that I drew from it. That as he continues to move, he says a word about faith chooses God over comfort. I may need to put 25 cents in the meter right here. Listen to what he says. By faith, Moses chose to be mistreated with his people. I mean, when you read the 11th chapter of Hebrews, he has some heavy hitters in there. But I'm telling you, they're considered heavy hitters because most of them had to take some heavy hits and still trust God. By faith, Moses chose to be mistreated with his people. Listen to me. Faith makes value judgments that defy logic. Yeah. Faith makes decisions sometimes that defies logic. I said earlier, sometimes people would think you're crazy because you're walking by faith and you're believing and trusting God. And sometimes you may even feel that you're engaged in an act of craziness. I think you have to be a little crazy to be a faith walker, to be an authentic disciple of Jesus Christ. Moses traded places. He traded palace privilege for God's purpose. He had it made. He was in the palace. He had all the privileges of a prince. But his faith caused him, allowed him to trade palace privilege for God's purpose. And sometimes you and I, we have to give up some privileges to walk and to live in God's purpose. Faith chooses eternal reward over temporary relief. That's what Moses did. That's why he is considered a man of great faith. Let me give it to you another way. Like an athlete who foregoes late nights and junk food for a future championship. Yeah, athletes make sacrifices. I'll give it to you another way. A soldier who leaves safety to defend something greater than himself. Faith today may mean choosing integrity over promotion, obedience over popularity, or conviction over convenience. Faith endures when compromise would be easy. And in our world today, it is so easy to compromise. Compromise is ringing all of our doorbell. Compromise is on all of our doorsteps. It's easy to compromise, but faith endures when compromise would be so much easier to do. Is there anybody that I'm talking to tonight who you could have compromised your position, but yet you chose to stand firm and walk boldly in your faith? Dietrich Bonhoeffer says, the cross is laid on every Christian. The first Christ's suffering, which every man must experience in the call to abandon the attachment of this world. In other words, if you're going to be a Christian, you have to accept the call of carrying a cross. You have to accept the call of abandoning some attachments to some of the things of this world. You can't love this world and God. And some people try to live in the gray, in the middle. But you can't live in the gray. You either trust God or you don't. You either walk in faith or you don't. You're either obedient or you're not. If you're trying to live in the gray, if you're trying to straddle the fence, stop it. You can't do it. It doesn't work. The Hebrew writer is sharing with us what faith looks like, what faith sounds like, and he's giving us examples of individuals who lived out faith, who walked out faith, who made decisions based on the track record, based on the evidence that God had given them, and based on the evidence they believed in the invisible, they believed in the not yet. The Hebrew writer keeps moving, and then as he gets towards the end, he starts talking and saying a word about faith perseveres through suffering. I know we don't like to hear that, but he says others were tortured, mobbed, imprisoned, mistreated. We don't like to hear about any torture. We don't like to hear about any suffering. We don't like to hear about any mistreatment because we don't want to end through it. We don't want to do it. But Hebrews 11 ends not with triumph, but with testimony. Faith is validated not only by miracles, but by endurance. These individuals that you find in chapter 11, the names that are named, every one of them, their faith was validated not just by miracles, but also by the fact that their faith endured to the end. The world was not worthy of those who suffered faithfully. Think of it this way. Like steel forged under extreme pressure, it gains strength because of the heat. Sometimes God uses the heat of life to strengthen us. If you don't like that analogy, try this one here. A lighthouse that proves its value, it does it through the storm, not on calm days. Yeah. You you really discover, you really appreciate the value of a lighthouse, not when the sky is clear and the day is sunny, but when night is dark and it's foggy and it's stormy, that's when the lighthouse proves that it's worth its value. That's when the lighthouse becomes valuable to you. That's when you realize just how valuable and how meaningful and how necessary that lighthouse is, not on sunny days, but on dark days. Hasn't God been a lighthouse for you on your dark days? Hasn't God been a lighthouse for you when the clouds hang low? This is faith that stands when healing doesn't come, church. Do you know, child of God, the faith that we're talking about, the faith that the writer of Hebrew is writing about, he is writing about a faith that stands when healing doesn't come, when judgment is delayed, when persecution rises. This is what the people who this letter was written to is dealing with. I'll say it again. They was experiencing persecution. They were getting weary in their faith. They were thinking about going back to Judaism, but he says, he being the writer of Hebrew, let me remind you of some people who've been where you are, who've walked in your shoes, and they kept the faith. Faith that endures does not ask, is this worth it? It already knows the answer. It's more than worth it when you trust God. It's more than worth it when you walk in obedience. I like what Charles Spurgeon says. He says, faith and trouble are close companions. They that will not believe without trouble shall not believe at all. Yeah, I like that statement. Let me give you my porch takeaways before my time runs out. If you're ready, get your takeaway journal. You should already have some takeaways. I've been trying to get you to see and share with you what the writer of Hebrews is doing. He's trying to encourage Christians who are experiencing persecution, who are growing weary in their faith, who are tempted to go back to Judaism. He's trying to encourage them by going name by name of other individuals who went through persecution, trials, and tests, yet they kept the faith. Here's my porch takeaways. Faith sees beyond circumstances. Child of God, don't get stuck with just looking at where you are now, what you're dealing with now. Faith sees beyond, past the present circumstances that you're dealing with. You've got to believe that in the end, God will give you the win. God will give you the victory. Here's another porch takeaway. Faith obeys without full understanding. Every great step of faith that I've taken since I started this journey with Jesus Christ, I had to do it without understanding a lot of things, without knowing a lot of things, without having all the specifics, all the details, all the answer. Faith obeys without full understanding. Here's what I give you another porch takeaway. Faith survives delay and disappointment. It's real when you feel God is taking too long, when he doesn't answer when you want him to, or how he wants you to. Yet, faith, because it has enough evidence, because it has tried and tested God enough, faith survives delay and disappointment. Somebody right now, you may be disappointed with an outcome. Somebody right now may be dealing with a delay. You have to have a faith that will get you past the disappointment. No, it didn't turn out the way you wanted to. No, you didn't get the answer and the outcome you wanted to. But you got to have a faith that will survive and get past and beyond that. Let me give you another porch takeaway. Faith chooses God over comfort. I know all of us want comfort, hassle-free, pain-free life, but sometimes we have to deal with being uncomfortable. And how does faith respond? It chooses to trust God. I got one more porch takeaway. We got about 7 minutes left. Faith, I put this in last intentionally. Faith endures suffering without surrender. Somebody needs that word there tonight. Faith endures suffering without surrender. I don't care what you're going through. I don't care what you've been through. Don't you surrender. Did you hear what I said? I don't care how bad, how dim it may appear to be right now. I don't care how low you may feel you are right now. I don't care how many times you've been knocked down. Don't you surrender. Don't you do it. You've got to trust God. Here it is. I keep telling you. This is when you have to go. This is when you have to go into your craziness. This is when you have to go. You have to tap into your ridiculous faith. This is when you have to talk and speak to whatever it is you're dealing with. You have to talk and speak to your situation. What do you tell it? What do you speak to it? You speak the word of God. And I don't know about you. I speak audibly, out loud, verbally to my situation, to my pain, to my delay, to my discomfort. Yeah. I know when I was a child, they used to say, you're crazy if you talk to yourself. Well, I'm a little crazy because I do a lot of talking to myself. I don't just talk to myself. I talk to whatever I need to talk to. Because sometimes I have to talk to Vernon and remind Vernon of the evidence that God has already given him. Sometimes I have to talk to Vernon and remind Vernon of the things that God has did for him, the things that God has brought him through, the things that God has brought him over, the times God has kept him. Sometimes I have to talk to Vernon and remind Vernon that this is not your first test, this is not your first trial, this is not the first time somebody disappointed you, this is not the first time somebody turned their back on you, this is not the first time somebody lied on you, this is not the first time you've had sickness in your family. This is not the first time, and this is not the first time that God is dealing with an issue that you have. Sometimes I have to talk to Vernon, and then sometimes I have to talk to my problem. Yeah. Sometimes I have to talk to my pain. Yeah. Call me crazy if you want to. But you have to have a faith that endures suffering, because you cannot live this life without enduring some suffering, without encountering some suffering and disappointment. And if your faith crumbles, if you fall down and fall out like a 2-year-old child every time you encounter some suffering, some heartache, and some pain, you got to do some work on your faith. Remember the evidence. Count your blessings and name them one by one, and you'll be surprised of what all the Lord has done. Don't you surrender. I don't know who I'm talking to. Don't you surrender. You may need to take this message. You may need to take this word to a family member. You may need to take this word and share it with a friend who is going through, who's thinking about surrendering. Tell them don't do it. Tell them they have evidence. Tell them to count their blessings and name them one by one, and they will be surprised at what the Lord has already done. This is what the writer of Hebrew is saying. This is the heart of the message of Hebrew. I know you're experiencing persecution. I know your faith is getting weary. I know you are tired. Some of you are thinking about turning back, going back to Judaism. But he's saying, don't you surrender. God has not changed. He's the same God today that he was yesterday. Don't you surrender. He's the same God that he was for Abraham, he'll be for you. Don't you surrender. The same God he was for Noah, he'll be for you. Why do you think he named all these individuals in chapter 11? He's saying to them, don't surrender. God was God for them. God kept them. God kept his promise for them. God kept them through, and he will do it for you. And so tonight, this letter, Hebrews chapter 11, is a letter that you need to put your name on. Oh, it has your name on it. You just need to see it. Before God caused it out of his sovereignty to be written, it had your name on it. This letter is saying to you and me today what it said to them back then. This letter is speaking in a world that is what it spoke in a world that was. Don't surrender. Stand on the promises of God. Keep the faith. Count your blessings. Name them one by one. And you'll be surprised what God has done. Let me ask you, I want to leave you with these rhetorical questions. I don't need you to type an answer in, but I want to leave you with these rhetorical questions. Something to think about. What is your faith asking you to trust God with right now? Question number 2. Are you measuring faith by outcomes or obedience? Question number 3. Will your faith endure if the promise takes longer than expected? I'm going to ask those questions again. They're rhetorical questions. You don't have to answer them publicly, but I want you to think about them. I want you to allow them to rest and sit in your lap. I'll say them again. Question number 1. What is your faith asking you to trust God with right now? Question number 2, are you measuring faith by outcomes or obedience? Question number 3, will your faith endure if the promise takes longer than expected? I'm going to give those questions to you one more time. I don't need you to answer them. I don't need you to type them in, but I want you to let them sit in your lap. I want you to hold them in your hand. They're rhetorical questions. What is your faith asking you to trust God with right now? What situation are you dealing with right now that you need to trust God with? Question number 2, are you measuring faith by outcomes or obedience? Question number 3, will your faith endure if the promise doesn't show up, if it doesn't come when you want it to, when you expect it? Child of God, church, faith is not a sprint fueled by emotions. Faith is a marathon sustained by trust. Hebrews 11 reminds us that the goal is not immediate relief, but eternal reward. It says, let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. Beloved, faith that endures is not loud, flashy, or always victorious in the world's eyes. It is quiet, it is resilient and unshakable because it trusts a faithful God even when the road is long and the trials are heavy. Did you hear what I just said? It trusts a faithful God, a God that has given you enough evidence to trust him. And you have tested him enough to know that you can trust him. Listen, I'm Dr. Vernon Shazier, aka the Gospel Cowboy, aka Dr. V. I hope I said and shared something with you tonight that inspired you, that strengthened you, that leads to transformation within you. The Bible is as relevant today as it was when it was written. This letter was written to you and I. We must trust in the invisible, in the unknown, in the answerless moments of life, because God, like he did for Abraham, Moses, Noah, has given us enough evidence, enough proof for us to trust him to the day we die. Hey, thank you for spending this time with me. I look forward to sharing another word from the book of Genesis on Sunday. I hope you are being blessed and enjoying This series that I'm doing on the book of Genesis, I am enjoying it. The Old Testament is just rich with so much drama, so much tension. There is not a movie, there's not a television show that is as rich and alive as the Bible. You just need to read it, and you will see that it is alive, rich, but most important, you see that God, that God, that is gods of gods, relentlessly pursuing man to give man grace, mercy, and bountiful blessings. Couples, married couples, if you have not registered, please register for our yoke gathering Saturday. Me and Sister Sean is looking forward to spending that time with you. And invite a couple. If you know a couple, invite them. I know sure that most of you know a couple. Invite them. Hey, I hope you have a blessed week, a champion week, the rest of your week. I'm out of here. I'll see you Sunday. God bless you.